Hello.
Hello, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today at the Biblical Perspective. You're joining us on the first study in a brand new quarter of studies that we're doing for this quarter entitled Rest in Christ. So we've got a really exciting quarter of
Mm.
Bible studies for you this quarter. So if you're not already subscribed, I'd like to encourage you to subscribe to the Biblical Perspective so you don't miss any of these up and coming studies, because they're all excellent and you're going to learn a great deal from each and every one of the studies that we'll be doing this quarter, as I'm sure you've learned from the videos that we've done before. So please thumbs up this video if you're at your computer right now, so that it helps us with the YouTube algorithm and help us to grow our channel so we can spread God's word to more people. So definitely thumbs up this video. So like this video, and also you can share. So we are live and we are an interactive study. So if anyone has any questions, or if they want to ask anything in particular relating to this topic, they'll be able to do that in the live chat. So I'm actually on the live chat at the moment on the YouTube channel. So if you do have any questions, definitely put them in there. And yes, so thanks again for joining us. So you're with myself, Colleen, and you're with Ruth South and with
Hello.
Pedro. So both Ruth and Pedro will be taking the study with you today, while I'll be looking and making sure everything's okay on my laptop right here with the live chat. So before we go any further on today's topic, which is living in a 24/7 society. And today we're going to specifically be looking at, the reasons why many of us actually never experience rest. And that includes many Christians who never experience rest. And we're going to delve into the reason why. So it's definitely a topic you don't want to miss today. So before we go any further, we're going to start with a word of prayer before we delve right into the study. So let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this opportunity that we have to study your word. Lord, I pray that when we leave this study today, that we will have a clear and accurate understanding as to why so many of us are stressed, are burdened, are anxious. And I pray, Lord, that we can truly find rest in you. I ask this in your precious and holy name. Amen.
Amen.
So,
Thank you,
Ruth,
Colleen. Yes, love.
we have faster phones, faster computers, and everything at the click of a button. Yet we don't have any time. We're overworked and we're stressed, and many of us don't experience true rest. So I'm excited to know what you're going to be discussing in our living in a 24/7 society today.
Exactly. And even this Facebook Live is part of that 24/7. And it's a blessing that we can come away from the one click. I know you're clicking away with the comments and questions, but equally, our brains can still be going on and on and on. So when we pull away now, and we're actually on the Facebook Live, we've got to thank God that we're able to do this, and we can bring the audience in our journey with us to find out how we can actually function within a 21st century society and keep our sanity within it. So we're going to look at everything today from the biblical perspective. And Pedro, I want to go into this one click, two click. And it's funny because people have got faster cars as well. They've got bikes now that are, they used to be pedal bikes, but now they are actually motorized bikes, to the point that, and it's a tragic story, that one young man, he lost his life a few weeks ago. Him and his girlfriend was not on a pedal bike, but was on an electric scooter, and a car hit them, and he passed away. Sorry, he was only 20, and he passed away a couple of weeks ago. The girl survived. And now things are going so fast, it's even taking people's lives. So, Pedro, I want to start off with a question, as in, why do people want to go on holiday at all costs, even in the middle of the pandemic? So, I gave a tragedy, but people want to get away from where they are and are going on holiday. But why in this pandemic do they even want to get away when the pandemic is a global phenomenon? What would you say to that?
Well, I think I will have a few things about this, but before that, I'd like to ask you a question. Maybe Colleen too can answer that, or even somebody on the chat. What makes you think that people want to do that? Is it just a statement that you're making, or do you actually have proof that people want to do that? People want to go on holiday at all costs, even within this pandemic situation?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm gonna kick off to say yes, I have evidence of that. Because in the media, it's talking about people wanting to fly, vaccine passports, and people have said to me specifically, I am taking the vaccine so I can actually go on holiday. They weren't taking it to go back to work. They weren't taking it to go back to school. They were taking it specifically to go on holiday. So that's my little bit of an evidence builder to give to you. Colleen, I don't know if you've got
Mm.
another response to Pedro's
Yeah,
question.
I think thinking about the holiday of a holiday is just kind of like it's kind of like a tip of the iceberg, isn't it? Like, you know, wanting to go on holiday, it's just one of the means that people use to escape from the day-to-day stresses and rigmarole of life. And I think people get so stressed that they just need to, you know, get away from it all. And holidays are just one way of doing that, but obviously there are other ways. But I think you know, being away on holiday and getting away from the laptop, getting away from the boss, getting away from the 9 to 5, the commute, and all those things that often you know, cause people stress. Um, so you definitely see that, and many people like actually, you know, take out loans. Can you believe that people actually will go on a credit
Yeah,
card and will pay for a holiday on their credit card, which you might think, oh well, they're desperate to have a holiday and that's the only way they can get a holiday. But then you have to come back and work, you know, that 9 to 5 and that job, or back into that situation that's stressing you out in order to pay for that holiday that you've just had. So it just goes to show how, you know, how desperate people do want to get away. And I think maybe a holiday is one, you know, is one area that reflects that.
Okay, so what I hear you say is people want to go on holiday because there is a need for it. People want to go on holiday at all costs,
yeah,
even within this pandemic situation, because there is a need for breaking away from the day-to-day reality. You see, that is the fate of what they would call in science the Homo sapien. That is the fate of the human being. That's the fate of humanity. Human beings have needs. And one of those, according to what you're telling me, is holiday, breaking away. And you know, there are many other needs that um, have been identified. If you just do a quick search about the needs of humanity, what will come up most likely and most commonly is all these different needs that were put together by a guy called Abraham Maslow. You've
oh,
heard
Maslow.
about
Yeah,
his yeah his pyramid of
it's
needs defining
hierarchy of needs. Yeah,
humanity.
yeah,
Yeah, that's correct. The hierarchy of needs. So let me show you in a couple of slides what this is all about. Not that you don't know it, but as a support to what we're trying to address today, the needs of humanity. These are the needs that we are told that we have in this life. Physiological needs. That's one. And the second one is safety and security. The third one is love and belonging. The fourth one is self-esteem. And the fifth one is self-actualization. So I put it this way, but there is another way of putting it with filling in what all these words mean. So on this second slide, let me let us identify what those needs are. So now we will start from the bottom. The last slide, need number one, was physiological. When you look at this slide now, you see it at the bottom of the pyramid. So what are the physiological needs that we all seem to have? We're still trying to look at why people would want to go on holiday at all costs, even within this pandemic situation. So the physiological needs, need for breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis, excretion. This has to do with functioning at a basic level as human being. And what you can see in there is the word sleep. Can you see it at the bottom among the physiological needs?
Yeah, it's a bit blurry
Sleep,
though.
need to sleep. Sorry?
Yeah, it's a bit blurry, but yeah.
So that is basic. And I guess that we would put under this sleeping as a physiological need, we would put resting.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And Colleen was saying in her answer to the question that people want to get away from the day-to-day reality of working and so on. So somehow people have a need to rest from what they go through on a daily basis in life. So if we go back to that slide and we look now at the second level, safety. And in that, we see security of body, employment, resources, morality, the family, health, property. And basically, it means to feel safe, we have a need to feel safe. And that need is fulfilled by accumulating all kinds of resources. Yeah. And do that through your job. Now, the next level is a need for love and belonging. And that includes friendship, family, sexual intimacy. Basically, have good relationships with others. The next one, self-esteem. Confidence, achievement, respect of others, respect by others. So basically, the Homo sapien, the human being, has a need to believe in humanity in a positive way for him and for others. And then the last need is a need for morality, creativity, spontaneity, problem solving, lack of prejudice, acceptance of facts. That is called self actualization. And it basically means to be successful with ourselves and with others. So these are the needs that we are told that we have. And basically, if all these needs are covered, then you should be fine. And what is the expression of being fine? The expression of being fine is having a good life, being at peace, resting in all aspects. Would you say so?
Yes, it sounds very plausible, very comforting.
But then,
But is
if
that
we
the
look,
reality?
that's my question to you. Let's say you have covered all these needs. We take, for instance, people who have um, everything they want at a basic level to the top level. Is it guaranteed that these people will, if all these needs are covered, is it guaranteed that these people will actually be fulfilled in themselves? They have the house, they have the family relationship, they have the respect of others, they have some kind of trust in themselves and in others, they are respected by others. Does that guarantee indeed that they won't need to go on holiday?
Okay, well, the problem here with your hierarchy of needs is
It's
that
not mine, it's
it's
not mine.
no, I know it's not yours. I mean, the fact that you've discussed it. The problem with it is that it's it's void of God, and on that list you've got their employment and family relationships and property and all these things, self-esteem, confidence, and so forth. But all these things are void of like necessarily a relationship with God, because you can have all those things and not have a relationship with God. So that means that ultimately there'll be a problem.
Can I add to what Colleen's just said? And I'm going to give you a personal example. I came to Christian. I left. I was a Christian and I left. And when I came back, now before I came back, I had exactly what you were saying, Pedro. I was doing fine. I was doing a degree. I had a car. I had a home. And my funds were fine. But I felt so empty. But I couldn't put my finger on it. And I was going along, going along, going along. And eventually, I realized it was a lack of God, but I couldn't identify it until I came to a point where I was saying I got all these things. I was even going on holiday and it wasn't even a pandemic and everything was fine, but I felt so empty. And when I realized the emptiness was a spiritual emptiness, that's when I started to study the Bible, had Bible studies, and I made a decision to want to be a Christian. So I get what Colleen's saying, and I echo what you're saying. It was a lack of that spiritual relationship with God.
Mm. Yeah, and also as
So what I
well,
hear you say,
Pedro, there's an element of this as well, where because a part of this argument ties into this whole idea of being happy, because this kind of like hierarchy of needs is kind of like, well, if you have all these things, it means that you'll be centered, you'll be grounded, and you'll be happy. But a lot of these things are physical. So it talks about employment, it's a job, resources, property, like security. A lot of those are physical, and that's why um, we fall into this trap where, as long as we have things or we've accomplished things, it means that ultimately we'll be happy. It means that ultimately we'll be okay. But that's not necessarily the case.
you
But
see,
yeah,
however,
go on, Pedro.
this is what the whole world seems to go by.
Hmm.
If you cover all these things, and let's be clear about this, when you were put in school, when you were growing up, when you were educated, um, the idea was exactly the idea behind this whole process and system is exactly what you have in here. So what we are saying, it is something that is very relevant, something that is very actual, something that is very real. However,
Mm.
it is only one side of reality, because we have so many examples of people who would have achieved all of this, yet they would take their own lives because
Mhm.
they could not cope. They were
Yeah.
coming from holiday. Some of them would even take their own lives while they were on holiday. And while they would be having the safe, while they would be having the family relationship, respect of others, and so on. So what we are saying, and what I hear you say, is there's something else that is not taken into consideration, and it might be the reason why we are still having all these things at a deficit, to the point that millions of people are
Mhm.
looking for an alternative to this
Mm.
life. And this is the reason behind it. We need to understand that we live in what we call a dualistic world. A
Yeah.
dualistic world. A dualistic universe. So, what do I mean by dualistic? What is dualism? This is what the dictionary would tell you if you ask the question, what is dualism? You can read with me. So, a dualistic world, the definition of dualism: one, a theory, not this word, a theory that considers reality to consist of two mutable elements or modes. Note, a theory. Second, the quality or state of being dual or having a dual nature. That is, there is one and there is another that makes one. 3a, a doctrine that the universe is under the dominion of two opposing principles, one of which is good and the other evil. And the last one, a view of human beings as constituted of two irreducible elements, such as matter and spirit. So this is what the dictionary will tell you about dualism. But my question is this: if we are honest, what have you experienced in this life? Have you experienced, it doesn't matter what you believe, whether you are a believer in the Bible, whether you are a believer in anything else, have you experienced that dualistic nature of life? For instance, have you heard the notion of good and evil? Have you experienced that? Whether you believe evil is this and good is that, and somebody else believes otherwise, still in good and evil, have you experienced that dualism, those two sides? Most likely the answer is yes. If we take the image of light and darkness, for evil and good, you hear people say, I was in a dark place, I was in
Mm.
darkness, but then I saw the light. Does that relate to the dualistic nature that we're talking about? One
Yes, it
that is
does.
light, the other one that is darkness, one that seems to be good, and the other one that seems to be bad? Is being in a dark place a good thing in
No.
people's minds, regardless of what you believe?
No,
No,
Is
it
it a
it
good
isn't.
thing
isn't.
being in a dark place?
No,
No.
no, and it's
No.
no, and it's interesting, right? How you mentioned I was in a dark place, and I've heard people who are not even spiritual use that. Why would they use that? Because inherently there must be something in their minds that tells them that to be in darkness is not a good thing. And even without the spirituality and all those ethereal things going on, there's something within that they know that darkness is not good and light is what brings them out of darkness into a new mindset, into a new way.
This is correct. And this is why you have so many people who are trying to escape
Yeah,
that reality. They
yeah,
understand the dualistic nature of life. They might not be able to explain it accurately, but in their own experience, they understand it. And
yeah,
this is the reason why. This is the reason why so many people try to escape by going on holiday at all costs, because they
mhm,
think if they get away from the situation of working every day, they might feel better, but they forget that in order for them to just go on holiday, take a plane, or even stay at home, they need to have the resources to do that. And those
mhm,
resources involve the activities that they are trying to run away from.
Mm.
So once they have had that little respite, what they call holiday, they have to
mhm,
go right back into the situation. So they leave year after year to do just that repeatedly. So some will try to escape by doing this. Others will try to escape that reality. I'm talking now of the reality of darkness and light, good and evil, by gaming. Gaming is taking over the whole
yes,
world
it is.
Mm.
because it
The
puts
mind.
people in a fantasy world in which they
Yeah,
can exalt themselves to a position where they think they won't have to worry anymore. But when you win, you only worry about when you're going to lose what you won. Are you
yeah,
with me? Many people will try to escape through entertainment. Now,
Mm.
the entertainment industry is
Yes.
making billions and billions
trillions, trillions.
Yes. Yes.
because
Yes.
it provides an
An
Mm.
escape
escape.
way from the
Yes.
reality of
Mm.
the dualistic nature of life. Let's take the
Yes.
example of movies, cinema. You see,
Yes.
most of those movies are made up stories. Why would you make up the story? Because you want to control the narrative and feel good at the end. Why?
Mm.
Because you long for an escape way to your reality. So many would have cinema as
Mm.
their main escape way. For others,
Yes.
it's just
Mm.
medication. It's just hard drugs. It's just alcohol that will take the mind away and cut them from that reality of this world being of a dualistic nature. The reason why I'm emphasizing
Laboring.
this,
Yeah.
yes, on this, is to demonstrate that while people would reject the idea of good and evil, we all experience it in this way. And all we need to do is to look at the data. Look
Mm.
at the data. Are you with me? So
Yeah.
we do all these things only to develop addictions that will
Mm.
take our
Come on.
unrest even
Take it down.
further down.
Yeah. Pedro.
So we need a solution to that. And you can realize that in that pyramid, there is nothing that deals with that. That pyramid might be true to some extent, but it does not address the other side of reality. But because most of us want to live only in that side of reality, we find ourselves trapped and restless because rest is found elsewhere.
Yeah,
Are you
can
with
I
me?
add? Can I add as well? I mean, that was a brilliant discourse on restlessness. And I think the chief issue as well is that you think when you go to work, when you go on holiday, when you go to your friends, when you watch a movie, when you're doing gaming, when you're doing anything, you take your mind with you. You can't take out your brain and put that dark bit of it that makes you feel like I need to go and do X, Y, and Z. You can't take it out of your mind and leave it there. It comes along right there with you. You go on holiday, even if you have an altercation with a family member or a neighbor or a boss at work, you're taking it with you and it will pop into your mind when you're sunbathing, when you're reading a book, when you're driving, when you're doing something. It never leaves you. It's always there. So even when you're gaming, as you mentioned, even when you lose, you're looking for that next win. You don't ever want to lose and that next top score. And again, you can't just put that away and say, I'll leave that top score and have another one. You're always looking for something to enhance and to beat that state of your darkness in your world. And you mentioned about movies. They are fictional. Some of them are based off documentaries, but they embellish it to make it all the more glamorous, all the more exciting, and the more pleasable to your mind. But again, it's another man's mind that is restless, that is dark, impacting on your mind, and you're stepping into his world. Whoever writes those movies, you're actually stepping into their mind and their mind of restlessness, their mind of darkness, because some of those movies are absolutely horrendous. So you can't just leave your brain and box it and then go on in your lightened existence.
Okay, so what we are saying, and thank you for that, what we are saying is there is a need that goes beyond this pyramid of needs. And this is the need that will actually give you all that you're looking for when you find how to fulfill it. This is the need that will actually give you all that you're looking for in fulfilling all these needs that you have in this pyramid. Now,
Yeah.
as I said, unless you realize this, whatever you do is only going to further your disillusion and the race for escape, for rest, for well-being. I'd like you to read a text in the Bible for me. And that text is what is the biblical picture of reality? We were talking about um, the dualistic nature of life. So this is my question on this next slide. What is the biblical perspective? If you could read 1 John chapter 5 for me and verse 19, please.
Okay. And we know that we are of God, and the whole world lieth in wickedness.
We
Wow.
know that we are of God, and that the whole world lieth in wickedness. What does that mean?
Yeah.
The word lieth here means it's like a baby in a cradle who is sleeping, and the cradle is just all around this baby, supporting the baby. So the world, if you can have this image in your mind, the world is in the hands of the wicked one. So
Yeah.
it does not matter what you do, you live in this world, you cannot change that condition because it was there before you the scene. You with me? So it is something that you need to deal with, and until you have dealt with it the way that is appropriate and that is defined by the one who made this world, you will always be kept in that prison
Yeah.
of illusion, try to escape the bad side of reality, but being ever successful. Why? Can you read for me Proverbs chapter 14, verse 13, please?
Is that
If you have
is
that
that
in
is that 13 or
14,
30?
13, chapter 1, 4, verse 1, 3. And if you could just
Okay.
read that in the New Living Translation for me, please.
Colleen, I've only got the King James. Have you got the
I've got the King James as well. The New Living.
Living
Okay,
Translation?
I'll try and the New Living.
So the book of Proverbs is a book that, if we really want to come out of darkness, we need to study this book of Proverbs. While Colleen's finding that in the New Living Translation, because I can see where you're going with this, and I'm excited to find out, all the more why we are in
So
this
you can read,
kingdom.
Ruth, you can read the King James while Colin is looking for the other translation for me, please.
Yeah, so 14:13. Even in
Yes.
laughter, the heart is sorrowful, and the end of that mirth is heaviness. You got two words there: sorrowful, heaviness, laughter and mirth.
This is the one side of reality that people
Yeah,
are trying to escape. Even in laughter. I mean,
yeah.
how it's like light and darkness. How do you
It is.
reconcile the two? Have you got
You
it now?
can't.
Yes,
You can
Proverbs
read it.
14:13, the New Living Translation, it says, laughter can conceal a heavy heart, but when the laughter ends, the grief remains.
Yeah,
You see, this is the situation that we have taken time. And here the Bible is just telling us what reality looks like for humanity in general. We try to laugh about everything and anything and try to make our way into ease, into happiness, into satisfaction. But if we don't do it the right way, it will vanish. And when it vanishes, it leaves you right at the place where you were before. It's like alcohol. Once the drunkenness is gone, or drugs, or anything else that you can use, once it is gone, you are right back. Once you have fulfilled all the needs of respect, self-esteem, achievement, and all of that,
yeah,
you still have to wrestle with the reality that this world lies in wickedness and it plays with
with your
your
mind.
mind.
Yeah,
But also, Pedro, just to add to that, because you just said that, after the alcohol, after the drugs, after all these things, you end up at the position where you started. But that's not necessarily the case, because often you end up worse than where you were before, because now you've got like now you are addicted to alcohol because you're trying to soothe some pain or some longing, or the drugs now becomes an issue in your life in regards to abusing. So often, in order, whilst escaping using these things, you potentially end up worse than where you started.
That's
Yeah, I
correct.
want
And
to.
that's why,
Can I just add to what Colleen's saying? I see a
yeah,
lot
and
of
then we
beggars on
need to
this.
move on quickly.
Yeah, we will. I see a lot of beggars on the street, and when they first come begging, they look okay, and people don't really want to give them any money. And eventually, as you go along, they get worse and worse and worse. And it's like, and I said to one of them, I said, I watched you when you first came, and you was like, asking for money, and I've seen a steady decline. He goes, I know, because now, as Colleen mentioned, they turn to drugs to let themselves feel better that they're on the streets. So that decline will happen. But then there's one that I know, and he stepped out of the street life, and he's got a place now. But I saw him decline, but then he came back through. But still, it's still in that darkness because he hasn't got the light that will take him totally out of it.
So that's correct. And this is what we've been saying. Now, what is the solution then? What is the problem that we need to address? Colleen, if you can read Psalm 14, verse 1 in that same version for me, please. Psalm 14, verse 1 in that same version, please. Now, let's look at what we need to do. And when I say this, I mean for all, whether you have tried to find your way of escape in any of the things that we have mentioned, or even in religion and
Yeah,
spirituality, this needs to be understood. Psalm 14, verse 1.
It says, this is the New Living Translation. Only fools say in their hearts there is no God. They are corrupt and their actions are evil. Not one of them does good.
Let me tell you something. This verse is one of the most misunderstood verses in the Bible. It has nothing to do with being an atheist, because we think that it's addressing people who don't believe in God. And we think that it is saying that people who don't believe in God um, are wicked and they're doing evil. That's not what the text is saying. The text, if we go into the context of it, it is a time when there is no atheism. Everybody believes that God exists. However, the idea behind is those who decide that they will not pay attention to what God has to say. They know that God exists. So now we're not talking about the atheists, we're talking about those who are Christians, those who are believers, but they will not put their lives under God. They will go on doing their own things. And now we think that the text is saying that they are only doing bad things. No, the text is not saying this. The text is saying whatever they do, they cannot benefit from it because the result of their doing is only bad.
wickedness.
We have just described our society. We have just described the people who lead this world and who think that they can improve things because they can decide, they can define what is good, what is evil. So they will make laws, they will
Yeah,
pass decrees, they will do things, but they do it with no regard to God. So the
yeah,
good intention is there, but the result of what they do is unprofitable to the very people they are trying to help And the result of what they're doing is to take further down the bottom, the situation of this world. Do you understand me?
Yes.
Absolutely.
This is not about
Absolutely.
atheism, people who say God does not exist. This is about people who may say they know that God exists, but they hope that they can do well outside of God. Like in this pyramid, they hope that if they cover all these needs, they will do well. Well, the news is, after all of that, they still commit suicide because none of what they did
Works.
is actually bringing rest into their lives. Why? Because that need of rest is not sleeping, it's not relaxing, it's not a break from work or from anything else. It is a breaking away from
From
the
God.
evil one who is
Yeah.
only there to kill, steal, and destroy you.
Absolutely. That's right.
Are you with
No
me?
matter no
So,
matter
see,
who you are. No matter who
no
you
matter
are.
who you are, no matter what you believe in,
That's right.
until you have put yourself under God, you lie in wickedness. That doesn't mean you're a terrible person, like people understand terrible person. That only means you have not found the escape way from restlessness.
The
And this
real
is what
escape way.
characterizes um, us today, even Christians. Even
Yes.
Christians. And um, I'd like to take you now to verse 12 of the same chapter, please. Can you read verse 12 for me, please?
Is that Psalms 14?
Sorry, no, Proverbs 14, verse 12.
Okay. Do you want it in the New Living Translation?
Yes, please, the translation that Colin has.
Okay.
Or you
Right.
can,
Proverbs.
yeah,
Proverbs
But
14:12.
yeah.
yeah.
Proverbs 14:12, New Living Translation. There is a path before each person that seems right, but its end is death.
This is what happens to
Yeah.
Christian and non-Christian, to believers and non-believers alike. From the moment we are not told what is good and what is evil, from the moment we are deceiving ourselves to think that we can decide for that in a world that we did not create, we will, whatever path we take, and they will look good and reasonable and rational to us, but they will only lead us into the very thing that we are trying to escape from.
Yes.
Our unrest is due to the fact that in Genesis chapter 3, there was a separation between God and man.
Yeah.
God said, don't do something, and man did it. From that point on, there is a gene of unrest that has developed into the human family.
Yeah.
And every parent will pass on that gene to every child that is
Yes.
born
Yeah.
under the sun. And
Mm.
vacation won't address the problem.
Mm.
Money won't address the problem. Good family relationships won't address the problem. Being respected by others won't address the problem. Drugs, alcohols, medication, none will address the problem because it lies beyond the physical realm. Only if you turn to God. And I'd like to take an example for you of that. If you go to Genesis chapter 4 for me, please. And that is really the example of humanity right now, even though that story happened right after creation. If you go to Genesis 4, verse 12, please.
And just quickly, Pedro, I just wanted to read, just because you just spoke about Genesis 13, and it brought to my mind Genesis 13:17, and it says, because you listened to your wife and ate the fruit from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat from it all the days of your life.
This is our
And that's
situation.
and that's part of our situation, that toil and labor that we go through, and we'll be going through that basically until our life is ended.
Yeah. So if that's correct, and this is in line with what we said at the beginning. But I will wrap this up nicely. If you can read verse 12 of chapter 4 of Genesis for me, please.
From which version?
Any. Just read it
Okay.
quickly.
When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be on the earth.
This is another verse that we sometimes misunderstand. That's the story of Cain after he killed his brother. We see he tried to escape the situation of restlessness in which he was, and he thought
Yeah.
that killing his brother would make him feel better. But in reality, he discovered that this only made it worse. But what I'm interested in here is God says you will be a fugitive and a wanderer. And some people think that Cain was then homeless. But again, this has nothing to do with homelessness. He became a wanderer. That means his situation of being restless aggravated. Why? Because he chose to have it his way rather than God's way.
God's will.
So in his mind, the word vagabond or wanderer here means being unstable. It
Yes.
means staggering, losing balance, like somebody who is
Drunk.
drunk. This is what it means. Now you can see how much this picture depicts the reality of our world today, right in the 21st century. And there is a reason for that. If you can read verse 14 for me, and then after that, verse 16 and 17 of the same chapter, please.
Is that Proverbs 14?
Yeah.
No,
No.
Genesis 4.
I'll read it. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid. And I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that everyone that findeth me shall slay me. 16. And Cain went out from the presence
Wait
of the
one
Lord.
second. What? 1 second, please. What we see here is the reaction of Cain when God speaks to him and tells him that. what I want you to notice is he is anxious about
Yes.
his life.
Yeah.
However, he has no interest in God's in repentance. He has
That.
no, if you read the whole story, he has
Yes, he
no
didn't.
interest in
No.
repentance. So what he then realizes that he consciously has made the
And
choice
to do. Yeah.
of being unstable by just staying away from God's way. And this
Mm-hmm.
is what happens to us, even
Mm.
Christians. We
Mm-hmm.
consciously make the
Yes.
decision to stay away from God's way, and then we are surprised that we
Yes.
have rest even if we say we are in Christ. Because what does it
Yeah.
mean to be in Christ? You
Yeah.
can read now verse 16 and 17.
And I agree with exactly what you've just said. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch. And he builded a city called the name of the city. Sorry, yeah. Sorry, he builded a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. So a vagabond and a wanderer would not be building a city.
Not only that, not only that, he will not be the type of our very own society. What we see here is the first establishment of city life. Have
Yeah.
you heard something like the sin of the city
Yes.
and
There's a program.
the
There's a
sinful
program
lifestyle of
called.
city?
Yeah. There's one called Sin in the City.
See,
Yeah.
this is why we should be interested in this particular story. Now, this man is a wanderer away from the presence of God, from his own words, while living just next to the garden. Where is God?
Mm.
Right
Out
there.
of his mind. This
Yeah.
is what he is saying. I will keep you out of my mind. And you know what? By doing this, he built a city. Wow. Somebody who is out of his mind builds. Somebody in whose mind God does not inhabit, build the first city.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Do you realize that now the whole world, if you take the statistics, they say to you that more than half of the population of the world
Living cities.
lives in cities.
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
then we talk about being restless. We talk
Mm.
about being a 24/7 society. But do you realize that we have gone even further to make the whole world a global village?
Yes.
Or shall I say, one city?
Yes. Yes. You know what's funny? You're mentioning that. My husband lives in Abu Dhabi, right? Well, he works there, and they've got a place called a global village, and they've got like every single country. You can taste every country all in one go, right? And it's interesting that you said that. But the incredible thing is what you've just said about Cain is that God was still there, but yet he tried to keep God out. But it was more than a physical, and I'm sure you're going to touch on that before we finish. You can't keep away God by building a city.
Well, God will respect people's choice. You know, at the
Yeah.
end of that,
Mm.
that city was destroyed in the flood
Mm-hmm.
because men rebelling against God had become so restless that they turned the world into horror. and God had to destroy this world, that world. What I'm saying is, maybe there is a reason why we are today as restless as we are. And maybe that reason is that we openly and conscientiously have removed God, not like an atheist to say God does not exist, but giving him no power in our
Yeah, in
lives.
our
And this
lives.
is really
Yeah,
the bottom line. You can read the Bible all day long. You can talk
yeah,
about being in Jesus all day long.
yeah,
But the Bible has already warned you in the last days, people will have a form of godliness. This is
but
right
denying the
back
power.
to, to, to Psalm 14, verse 1. But they will not allow godliness to dictate to them
Yeah,
what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is evil. They will want to do that themselves. And the text is telling you, the moment you do that, you will not benefit from what you're doing, because anything that is outside of light is darkness. Anything that is
absolutely.
outside of good is evil. So, what is the solution? The solution
Yes.
practically is what Jesus says in Matthew 11, verse 28. He says, "Come to me."
Mm,
He's not talking about become a Christian. Or should I say, he's not saying change your name and put the word Christian before. He is
mm,
saying change your mindset. You wonder
mm,
why the world that is now a global city provides you with all the things that you find in that pyramid. All those things that you find in the pyramids, in that pyramid, this is what the internet that has made the world a global city is providing you with. And people are desperate to have all these things, all these needs covered. But at the
mm,
same time, they do not, even if they are believers, even if they are Christians, they
yeah,
don't necessarily want to have God
that's right.
defining what is good, what is evil, what they
Mm,
should do, what they
yeah,
should not do. So I'm telling
absolutely.
you,
Yeah.
the situation of being restless,
Mm,
even for some Christians, is in this fact of not allowing
yeah.
God to decide for you what your life should be, not understanding that you cannot escape the fact that in this world there is good, there is evil, and you do not control any of
Anything.
these.
Yeah.
They control you.
Thank you very much, Pedro. That was a wonderful Bible study. And that's why
I
it's
just wanted
important
to read. I just
to
wanted
do
to
you need the
read. Sorry,
comments?
a few comments. Yeah.
Okay.
We had one from earlier, and it says that's true. They are doing the same thing over here, taking vaccines just for a holiday. They want to go
Yeah.
back to normal, and a holiday is what they think they need more than anything. And there's a comment as well. It says, if you know God, you will find him in Maslow's arguments. Only those who are void of God will not find God in it. And also it says they want to run into the living waters of Psalms 23. They look at water as peace. holiday to them is peace and quiet and restoring their souls. And there's a text recommendation, which is Ecclesiastes 8:12-13. So I just want to thank everyone for their comments today.
Thank you, Colleen. And that's why, as Pedro and we've all alluded to, we need this. If we don't have this is where we're going to find our holiday. This is where we're going to find our peace and rest. But we have to understand it. And that's why Bible study is so important. Because even that text in Psalm 14:1, it's not about the atheists, as Pedro said. It's about Christians who are acting as though God does not exist for them and they want to go it their own way. But you will need to come to these studies. So please, please come back again next week. And don't forget, this is your best instruction before leaving Earth, because we're going to go and find our ultimate rest in the Lord. So Pedro, I want to thank you for that. And by God's grace, we'll be here again next week for another wonderful Bible study, looking at rest. Colleen, you got your final thoughts?
No, I've said it all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you, viewers. And by God's grace, have a good week, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.